Hey there, fourth grade. It's Mr. Remedies coming to you with today's reading mini lesson. Today, we're still continue on to keep on keeping on with our study of author's craft. As you can see on our screen, what's up? We're talking about authors and how they use symbolism in their stories. You guys know what's next. It's April. I'm not fooling you. You know the story. Here comes our learning goals and success criteria, letting us know where we're headed for today. All right, our learning goal today over here, we are learning to notice and understand how a writer uses symbolism. Okay, along the way, we have 3 I can statements for you that help you know that you're getting the idea and that you're really working towards achieving your goal. First one being I can define symbol and symbolism. Number 2, I can identify objects or ideas in stories that are symbolic. And 3, finally, I can discuss how symbolism is important to understanding a story. We hit those 3 along the way, we've achieved our goal. And if soccer's taught me anything, we want some goals. All right, let's move on to our important vocabulary for the day. So we're trying to do a little word up action here. Today, our very important vocabulary is symbol. A symbol is an object that represents a different idea or object, right? So you guys are familiar with symbols like I'm sorry, not the Batman. Oh man, my comic book buddies are gonna get after me. Whoopsie. Superman's S. That represents him and his ideals. A country's flag represents that actual location and hopefully some of the ideals that they stand for. Even in math, we have symbols. Those operation symbols, those math symbols, represent an action or idea. Like the plus symbol means I'm gonna add 2 things together. And even something like a wedding ring, like your moms and dads and your parents out there, they may have a wedding ring on. That's a symbol of those 2 people's commitment to each other. So those are just some everyday symbols that we may see. A symbol is the object, like it says on the screen, the object that represents a different idea or object. When I say the word symbolism, we are talking about the use of symbols. Okay, they're kind of interchangeable, but there's a slight little difference, and you now know that difference. How? So let's look at some examples for some of our read alouds that have had some symbolism in it, so we can really kind of understand how authors really use a very important tool. First example of learning how to recognize symbolism and symbols in stories is one of our books that we read way back in August. We're talking about The Other Side. You can see the cover on your screen. Hopefully you're thinking way back to that time. Remember, this book is about 2 young ladies, 2 little girls that live in the same town. However, they are not allowed to play with each other because they are of 2 different races. And so to keep these 2 different races separated, there is a fence that runs through the town that kind of lets everybody know where they're supposed to stay, quote unquote, I guess. Right? So remember, you have one young lady who plays with her sisters, and then the little white girl comes up and starts to kind of hang out closer to the fence, and then eventually they start to become friends. Right? So the question becomes, when we are starting to learn to recognize symbols, is what object is important in this book? Is it tire swing? Is it the jump rope? Is it the fence itself? Well, boom, it's the fence. I know this is important because the girls spend a lot of time playing near the fence. I noticed that the fence is talked about and mentioned quite often in the story. And heck, even the title of the story references the fence, The Other Side. This is a story about 2 girls that live on the other side of the fence from each other. Right? So throughout this story, my next question is, why is it important? Okay? It's important because it stands in for the idea of separation. this is how the author has chosen to represent the idea that these girls have to be separated. And that is a very important part of understanding what the message of the story is. So it's important that we recognize this symbolism. So we can put these two questions, these two thinks and thoughts into a pretty nice summary sentence as we learn to recognize that. So what object is important in the book? Why is it important? So we can say the fence is a symbol of separation, or more specifically in this book, segregation. All right. Now that we got this one out of the way, let's look at one more really good example of symbolism in a book that we've already read. That book is the book of poems called Stitchin' and Pullin'. Same question. What object is important in this book? This one's tricky. No, it's not tricky. It's not tricky at all. If you guys remember this book, this is a collection of poems all about the little girl who is called Baby Girl in her family's home, listening to her mother and grandmother and great-grandmother put together a quilt, and then creating a quilt and sewing a quilt herself. So pretty easy to identify what object is important in this book. It's the quilt that they're making. It's the quilt that she's making. Why is this important? It is important because it is made from her family's old clothes. She mentions in one of her poems that she hopes the corduroy remembers that it was part of her uncle's pants during an important life event. Right? So I can ask what's important based on what I've read. The quilt is important. It's important because of some of those things we just discussed. So I can sum that up in saying the quilt is a symbol of life and the memories of that life. What a wonderful thing to start to learn to recognize, because it helps us understand the story better. Right? And with that, we're going to go to some real talk with remedies. Boom, back on your screen. Boys and girls, I absolutely love teaching kids how to recognize these symbols. Symbolism is such a good way to understand the idea that the authors are telling us, and I always go back to the little engine that could, right? That's such a simple story from when we were kids, but it's full of symbolism, okay, right? That mountain is a symbol for any challenge that we may have in our life that may seem like it's impossible. And the little engine is us. And so I just absolutely love that symbolism. It's everywhere in books. I absolutely love it. So once we recognize what the symbol is, by looking at and thinking about what that object actually does, or how that object is built or constructed or made, like a fence. Like a fence's job is to keep things separated, or to keep things like animals or people from moving into places that the fence builder doesn't want them to go. So thinking about things like that help us understand the stories much, much better. Okay? And then it makes us appreciate the author so much more. Okay? And it makes us really enjoy what they have to say in new and exciting ways. So this is one of my favorite things, because it's a higher level skill that I really think you guys should grab onto. All right, this has been Real Talk with Remedies. Like I'm a pro at it now, so I think we're going to go right here. Boom, Real Talk with Remedies. Now, back to our lesson. Real talk, symbols and symbolism are incredibly important to understanding the story. Today, our review, today we talked about three main things. We learned that authors sometimes use symbols and symbolism to represent a big idea in their story. Okay, a symbol, we define symbol. A symbol is an object that represents an idea or another object. Right? And then we talked about how authors use symbols to help their readers understand the message better. And then we looked at two examples: the fence in the other side representing segregation, and the quilt in stitching and pulling representing a person's life and memories, right? I can't express how important this is. I love when authors use symbolism because it makes it more enjoyable. It involves me and my mind in the story because I have to find the symbolism and I have to realize it, and bing, I get that light bulb moment, and that's super cool. Okay? You guys have been awesome today. Never forget that. I've been Mr. Remedies. You're my fantastic fourth graders, and we will see you next time.